and welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Lauren, and today I am looking at a Madly Mesozoic video. This one is called Could Orcas Survive the Mesozoic? I believe this was suggested to me on one of my other videos. I'm looking forward to it. I've been enjoying all of these fun pre-human history videos, all these prehistoric videos. I think they're so fun. I think they're really interesting. I wouldn't have considered orcas as something that surviving. I'm gonna say no, probably not. I just don't think they're big enough. They're mean enough, maybe, but I don't think they're mean enough to survive in the Mesozoic. But that is just a personal thought. And I don't know too much about orcas other than what Casual Geographic and Lindsay Nicole have told me. And honestly, that's mostly Casual Geographic. Or Tier Zoo, maybe. I don't know if Lindsay Nicole's talked too much about orcas. I guess it doesn't matter. We're gonna find out what Madly Mesozoic has to say. Yeah, let's put the dinosaur in Times Square. The movie We're Back tells us why that's a bad idea.
Mesozoic maniacs and dinosaur dorks.
Gentlesaurs? I love that.
Welcome to Assessing Survival, the series where we take animals, people, and fictional creatures and place them in different periods throughout history, as well as some places in fiction. You guys voted, and in today's video, we will be
that's actually really fun. Ooh, I like that a lot. That's a really cool premise.
placing the killer whale into the Mesozoic. If you'd like to be a part of deciding what the next video will be about, subscribe and don't forget to keep an eye on the community tab of the channel. Polls are normally posted a few days after the video is uploaded. Just like in our previous episodes, before we put our subjects into the Mesozoic, we have to determine what period and time frame of the Mesozoic we'll be putting our orcas into. Not only to see where they'll be best suited for the environment, but also to see what ecosystem would be the most interesting to speculate on. We're going to start with the Triassic period. The Triassic period really set the stage for aquatic ecosystems.
They're so big.
Time. Animals like ichthyosaurs, nothosaurus, and early plesiosaurs carved the path for animals that had adapted on land to make their way back into the water. Tenmodontosaurus, a predatory ichthyosaur, was roughly the same size as an orca and fed on most anything it could. But it was
okay, so I really thought that orcas would be way too small for any of these periods, but okay.
Wasn't really adapted for hunting larger prey like Shonisaurus or Shostosaurus. These animals, as adults, as far as we know, don't have any predators other than maybe each other. In my opinion, in terms of the trophic systems, orcas would absolutely clean house. The only real threat comes from Tenmodontosaurus, which likely wouldn't even attack orcas once they figure out they're pod animals.
Okay, fair enough.
Harder for the ocean to be as diverse as it is today. Coastal waters and reefs really only existed around the perimeter of the continent, creating more than 16,000 miles of open, desolate ocean.
And we have no idea, if there might have still been stuff over there. I guess we won't know.
Like I normally bring up in previous episodes, the Triassic was really hot. Ocean temperatures averaged about 40 degrees Celsius, which is hotter than the hottest parts of our oceans like the Persian Gulf and Inner Gulf of Mexico, which orcas today tend to stay away from. However, orcas are pretty adaptable, and maybe after a generation or two, they could become much leaner to compensate for higher temperatures. I believe orcas would do too well in the Triassic. The ecosystem is pretty much entirely different from their current environment, and likely isn't able to support a hyperactive predator like the killer whale. The Jurassic period.
Okay, so no. I'm correct in saying no, they would not survive.
It's the trend of the development and diversification of marine reptiles in the ocean. In the Jurassic, we see plesiosaurs and pliosaurs take over the role of apex predators in the oceans over ichthyosaurs.
I appreciated those references.
There's a lot of debate on just how big pliosaurs actually became in the Jurassic. Most solid estimate we have for the largest pliosaur is Pliosaurus funki, which is estimated to reach just about 12.5 meters or 42 feet at upper estimates. When put against an average orca, 23 to 27 feet, this really isn't all that impressive, especially considering orcas hunt whales much larger than themselves on a regular basis. So despite their size and ferocious appearance, many of the top predators of the Jurassic oceans would be easy meals for orcas.
See, that's so interesting. I wouldn't have really considered that. I mean, I know that they go after sharks and stuff. And again, they're pod animals. So they will go and, bounce creatures around their little noses just because they're horrid. But hadn't really considered that it would work with creatures that much bigger.
The Jurassic was much more biodiverse and had a more suitable temperature for orcas than the Triassic, but honestly, I think the Jurassic would be a boring place to put them. I think it would just be too easy for them.
Oh, interesting.
The Cretaceous is the most well-documented, and as far as we know, most...
He's like, I like that he's like, it would be, they could, but yawn. Let's move on to something more exciting. I love that. I like that the criteria isn't just would they survive and thrive. It's like, would they be enjoying themselves while they did?
Diverse aquatic ecosystem of all the Mesozoic. It will also be the most challenging for orcas because of the advent of predators like mosasaurs. Ocean surface temperatures in the Cretaceous were pretty uniformly averaged around 30 to 35 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
Though still pretty hot, this is
Still
much
pretty
better
warm.
than the Triassic. The Cretaceous also has a lot more areas the orca can thrive in as opposed to the Triassic. If we look at a map of the globe in the
And more
Cretaceous,
stuff.
it's more or less just like our map, but with much higher water levels. This means a lot more coastal waters and reefs where marine life tends to thrive. For these reasons, I believe the Cretaceous would be the most interesting and the most familiar era to place them in. We'll be taking a breeding...
And also that makes a certain amount of sense because it's the closest one to us, right? So like, it makes sense that the closer you get to where we're at, the more likelihood they'd be to survive. But they would be bigger, I guess. I guess they would have to, like, they probably would have gotten bigger in that time period.
Population of orcas, which I'm estimating to be about 8 pods of 5 to 10 individuals and dispersing them throughout the oceans of the Cretaceous globe.
Okay.
This is the first assessing survival, and maybe the only one, where we'll actually be handicapping the subject animal.
Oh,
Our subject orcas
rude.
will
Why?
be the smallest known variant of orca whales, and that is the offshore orca whale, whose maximum length tends to be 22 feet. I'll be using 5 different categories to assess the orca's ability to survive. These categories will then be added up for a final assessment score. These categories are environment suitability, advantages, disadvantages, food sources, and competition, as well as a section at the end of the video where we speculate how they might evolve and adapt to their environment going forward. So without any further ado,
I was trying to figure out what show that came from, and then I realized I have no idea.
Let's get into the
categories. Like, there's no way I'll know. I think it's probably Numbers or something that I've never seen.
Environment suitability. Now, we mostly went over this, but I'd like to reiterate that orcas will be perfectly comfortable living in the Cretaceous Ocean. Killer whales inhabit all parts of the ocean, excluding very deep open ocean and particularly hot areas.
Makes sense.
Orcas that inhabit the polar regions are even known to...
Didn't know what to put in this space, so here's a fun little graphic. I like it. You know what? Go for it. You do you, boo.
Quote-unquote vacation to tropical regions during the coldest times of the year. So moving our orcas to the Cretaceous period will essentially be like your grandparents in Colorado moving to Florida. Environment suitability,
T-Rex
5 out of 5. Advantages. Now, orcas have a plethora of advantages for us to go over, so this is going to take a minute. The first advantage is their size. Orcas, even on the smaller end, are quite large. The offshore orcas in the North Pacific are on average 21 feet or 6.5 meters long and can weigh anywhere between 65 to 12,000 pounds, or 3 to 5,000.
So again, my biggest hang up at the beginning of all of this was, are they big enough? And yeah, apparently they are fine. Okay. But see, this is why I watch these things, because it's like, I don't know. I have some very vague ideas and biases, but I don't know. So it's good to know. Now I know.
Kilograms. This is a lot of weight to push around, especially in a group. That makes your average pod of orcas around 40 to 50,000 pounds of whale. Even when considering the sizes of all marine life in history, this is pretty big. Orca pods can consist of anywhere between 2 and 15 individual whales. In rarer cases, pods will consist of almost 200 individuals, typically for temporary social interaction, mating, or seasonal availability of food. This is in contrast to the predators of the late Cretaceous, who, as far as we know, didn't live in any type of social group at all, and if they did, it wasn't nearly this size. Another advantage is their intelligence. Orcas, dolphins, and cetaceans in general are without a doubt the most intelligent animals on the planet behind human beings. Orcas sport the second largest brain in the animal kingdom behind sperm whales. Orcas are known for their complex and coordinated hunting strategies. For instance, they work together to create waves that knock seals off of ice floes, herd fish into tight balls for more efficient feeding, flipping sharks over to knock them out before eating specifically their liver, and when...
weird! Why? Okay. See, I don't know if I knew that ever. They eat their livers? What? Okay, sure. Weird.
They will often first attack the whale's fins and tail fluke to immobilize the whale. They are capable of teaching these things
I knew they were smart.
to younger orcas as well as other pods. We know this firsthand because there is an increasing number of orcas attacking and disabling boat rudders, meaning they're likely telling all their friends how to do it. Killer whales in South Africa specifically target the liver of great white sharks. We don't know why they do this, but presumably Shark liver tastes very good to them. Orcas also use
Okay.
a sophisticated
Sure.
system of vocalization and echolocation to converse with each other. Orcas are also very emotionally intelligent. They are
Aw,
very
she's
tuned into the
showing them.
feelings
Oh,
of
that's
their
really
fellow
cute.
pod members as well as other animals. Okay, that's as much as
That was really cute. She was wearing black and white too. I mean, all of that was adorable.
you're gonna get out of me for their intelligence. Food sources. To put it simply, everything is on the menu for the killer whale. There's no animal in the oceans of the Cretaceous that I
Okay.
don't see orcas being able to take down. But let's go over some of these prey items and figure out what might be their prey of choice. Ammonites, plesiosaurs, fish, sharks, seabirds, smaller mosasaurs, and sea turtles. To put it
Okay.
simply, orcas will have a field day with
Troll face? That's so
the
good.
life of the Cretaceous. None of these animals I just mentioned have any chance of fighting back against a pod of orcas. Just like
Yeah, not a
orcas
pod.
today, I imagine that orcas in the Cretaceous would also have their own preferred prey from pod to pod and individual to individual. Some
Makes sense.
pods may prefer to hunt ammonites and sharks, while others may prefer going after marine reptiles. Food sources, 4.5 out of 5.
That'll be good.
Disadvantages.
Why?
Now,
Why a 4.5? Just because they can't get everything? Like, is that why?
there's a reason I saved disadvantages for after the food sources category. This is because orcas have an incredibly high metabolism and appetite. Your average orca will eat almost 300 pounds of food per day.
Okay.
That's hundreds of thousands of calories on a daily basis. Now, the reason I see this as a disadvantage is because we don't know if the Cretaceous ocean can support an appetite of this magnitude, as even predators like Mosasaurus likely only needed to eat half as much as a single orca, as they are reptiles and have much slower metabolisms. My concern for the orcas in the Cretaceous is that they may very well overhunt and end up inadvertently starving themselves and disrupting the ecosystem. Another disadvantage
Okay.
they have is maturation and gestation. Orca whales take on average 17 months to gestate in their mother's womb and
Whoa!
reach reproductive maturity anywhere between 8 and 13 years. To
Whoa!
grow for 25 years. Females can only give birth to a single calf, and will often wait 3 to 5 years before mating again. But
Oh my god, wow, okay, yeah, none of that did I recall ever learning before. That's crazy. I did not realize that it was that long. I mean, I'm sure that I learned that at some point, but it's been long enough since I've watched any kind of video on orcas that all of this information is new to me again.
can wait as much as 10 years. Mammals
Wow.
in general take much longer than birds and reptiles
Wow,
to grow.
they live for a long
Mosasaurs
time.
and plesiosaurs also gave live birth, but likely gave birth to more than one individual. They also likely matured much
Okay.
faster. Disadvantages.
Shit out them kids!
Now for the competition category. There are 3 large predators that come to mind in the late Cretaceous oceans. The first one is Elasmosaurus. Elasmosaurus is a sizable plesiosaur, reaching almost 43 feet at
A
higher
mermaid.
estimates. But most of this length is of course in its neck. This marine reptile is very well adapted for hunting and eating fish. Their small, unassuming heads are hypothesized to trick their prey into thinking they are much smaller than they really are. The neck of an
Sneaky. I
Elasmosaurus
love
is
that.
a serious weak point, and with a bite force on par with that of saltwater
Yeah.
crocodiles, an orca could easily snap the neck of the
Yeah, and they would just smack right into them too. Honestly, I can see them getting killed by accident. Just like some bigger creature just like swimming too quickly, clotheslines them, and like,
these animals and instantly kill them.
I mean,
The
I'm sure that their necks are stronger than that, but it is a kind of a funny image in my head because it feels kind of Looney Tunes to me.
plesiosaurs likely cared for their young and lived in family groups. They're just too vulnerable to something like an orca. The second
Yeah.
animal is Cretoxyrhina. Coming in at 26
Cretoxyrhina.
feet, this shark is a very formidable predator. Bigger than our average orca, taking one of these sharks down could be a challenge for an individual orca.
But there's a whole
but
bunch of
not
them.
a pod.
Yeah.
However, there are a number of sharks that tend to live together in groups for safety
Bull
and ease of
sharks
feeding.
and blue
So they lack the
sharks.
social cohesion of marine mammals. Even great whites have recently been observed traveling across the Atlantic in a group, which pretty much goes against everything we knew about them previously. If
I've heard of
Cretoxyrhina
that.
lives and
I do
travels in
remember that.
groups like modern sharks, they could genuinely give orcas a reason for pause. Do I think if we were to put them in an arena and force them to fight that they would come close to winning against orcas? No. Chances
Huh.
are, if orcas wanted to eat a Cretoxyrhina, they would isolate it from the larger group and gang up on it to take it down.
Yeah,
However,
I
this
can
is
see
still
that.
a dangerous predator, and the orcas will have to be careful about how they dispatch them. I think our orca whales would sooner go after easier prey than approach a group of these sharks. But if the other options are
Depends
slim,
on how
the
asshole they
Cretoxyrhina
feel like being
remains
in a
possible
particular
meal.
day.
And last but certainly not least is Mosasaurus hoffmanni, coming in at an average of 42 feet long. Hoffman's mosasaur.
Again, I
is
love
a
the
big
little
predator.
mermaids that are his
This
little
ambush predator dominated its
scale.
ecosystem by feeding on ammonites, fish, plesiosaurs, and other mosasaurs. However, when orcas are added into the mix, this massive reptile may no longer be the top dog. Orca whales are more than capable of taking down even blue whales with enough pod members and effort. Even at its higher
Yeah, I
estimates of
thought I knew that.
57 feet long, Mosasaurus simply doesn't have the size and power to deter a pod of orcas. Though let's not count the
Very few things do, I think. I feel like you get a bunch of orcas together and it's the same as if you get a group of 14-year-old boys together, you know? They think they're invincible. You know, they're like, you've got 7 of them. They're like, we can do anything. So I feel like you have enough orcas in a group, they're not gonna give a shit about much. They're gonna be like, we got this. Until they learn the hard way.
reptile out just yet. Let's go over exactly why Hoffman's mosasaur was so successful in its environment. The hunting behavior of this mosasaur was likely similar to that of modern crocodiles. This animal would sit in darker waters in the depths and quickly accelerate up to 30 miles an hour in a sudden burst of speed and catch their prey by surprise. They likely couldn't sustain these speeds for very long. Even if they were warm-blooded reptiles, their metabolism weren't as complex as that of orcas. Maintaining high speeds for more than a few minutes would burn an incredible amount of energy that the Mosasaurus just doesn't have. A pod of orcas could easily run down and tire these marine reptiles and take them out. But like the Cretaceous, this is still an incredibly dangerous predator, and could very suddenly dispatch an orca in a sudden burst of speed and power. Mosasaurs had an estimated bite force of around 13,000 to 16,000 pounds per square inch. This is definitely enough to kill an orca pretty quickly. Orcas have strong bonds with their pod members, and once they realize—
I mean, they might get revenge. We might have a John Wick moment, but like, I feel like orcas, in that same vein of the teenage boy in a group, like, they think they're pretty invincible, but they're also probably a little bit smarter than your average teenage boys in a group. You know, they're not necessarily going to go after something that's dangerous. I mean, they might if they've got enough of them and they're feeling particularly dickish. But I don't know. I feel like they'll probably still they would maybe defend themselves, or if again they're a little high on puffer juice venom, then maybe. But I feel like mostly they'd stay away from things like that. But what do I know? The answer is nothing. That's why I'm watching this video.
As the danger of hunting a Hoffman's mosasaur, I think they would sooner steer clear of these marine reptiles than risk losing a member of their pod. Orcas will most assuredly go after younger and smaller mosasaurs, but an adult Mosasaurus hoffmanni is not worth the risk. Competition 4.5 out of 5. Final assessment score is 9.2 out of 10. This should come as no surprise. Orca whales are the epitome of an aquatic predator. No animal is better adapted for dominating the ocean than these cetaceans, but in the Cretaceous they could be too much for their new environment. Though it's more likely that the animals around them would evolve to compensate for their disruption of the environment, let's speculate on how orcas may evolve and change to better balance this new trophic system, just for fun.
Maybe less fat, you know, like less blubber and stuff to like skinny them up, and then they don't have to eat as much, you know, maybe?
Speculative
that seemed to be his big issue.
Bigger isn't always better. Orcinus tachyoptera, the swift-winged orca, or Orcas for short. In just a couple million years leading up to the KT extinction, our original population of orcas has become much smaller to compensate for their extreme appetites, allowing them to maintain their lifestyle without decimating the ecosystem. They resemble a mix of bottlenose dolphins and belugas while maintaining their unique pattern. Orcas no longer hunt such prey like Elasmosaurus and Mosasaurus, but rather they mostly eat ammonites, fish, and smaller marine reptiles. Their teeth have become much more blunt and sturdy to allow them to easily crack open the shells of ammonites and mollusks. The average Orca comes in at a weight of 1,300 pounds and a length of 12 feet. The intelligence of these animals has remained proportionate to their body size, meaning they are just as intelligent, if not more. An interesting aspect of their behavior as a result of this is the use of tools. Orcas use the shells of other creatures as weapons, toys, and shovels. They use the flatter shells for shoveling through sand, oftentimes to find mollusks or just to have fun. They use sharper, pointier shells, like those of belemnites, almost like a sword punch for their snout. Orcas will use this against larger predators like Mosasaurus,
fake narwhal.
better chances in an encounter with them, but will also use them in encounters with other descendants of orcas, which brings us to our next speculative evolution. Maybe bigger is better.
These are fun.
Solus, the lone hunting orca.
I like that he's like created some fun names for them too.
Or the Venator whale for short. Another way orcas could evolve to fit a niche more balanced with their ecosystem is foregoing their large pods. The Venator whale has evolved to live a lifestyle that's a mix of sperm whales and their reptilian contemporaries, the mosasaur. While females and calves continue to live in pods, Though in much smaller numbers than orcas, bull males tend to live mostly solitary lifestyles. The venator whale has become quite a bit larger now that their kills are not shared among pod members. These large toothed whales reach lengths of 45 to 50 feet, or 14 to 15 meters. Not nearly as big as today's sperm whales, or the Miocine's Leviathan, but still on par with mosasaurs and much larger than orcas. These animals prefer hunting large marine reptiles like plesiosaurs and Hoffman's mosasaur, but also eat things like fish and ammonites when they can't find enough food. Sometimes they even prey on their cousins, the Dalca, though this isn't common. Their once massive dorsal fins have now slimmed down, as a whale of this size with such a massive dorsal fin would be very prone to being rolled over by strong...
Oh, the speculation is so fun, and I love it when people talk about like speculative stuff like this as if it's like there's evidence. It's so much. I enjoy it a lot.
We observe this in sperm and blue whales today. This fin is likely to become much smaller as the years go on. They have also evolved a much larger sonar melon so that they can communicate with other whales and locate prey from a much greater distance.
Nice.
Much like sperm whales, these whales produce a clicking noise that is almost enough to rupture the eardrums of most creatures within a certain distance. These whales are very few and far between, often not running into another of their species for hundreds of miles. With the advent of the KT extinction, marine reptiles were all wiped out. We don't know exactly why the impact on the surface affected large marine life in the ocean in such a way, but our best guess is that the change in the atmosphere also affected the ocean, acidifying it to an incredible degree.
Okay, interesting. I wasn't never quite sure. It was like changing thing, environment, but also like, did it get hot? Like, did the seas boil? Ow, I just hurt myself. Boiling seas. That could, just little boulebase.
Trophic systems from the bottom up, making it much harder for larger animals to survive. Luckily, the descendants of our more dolphin-sized Orcinus tachyoptera just barely scraped through to the Cenozoic era. But now, there are so many niches that are wide open and ready to be filled by our orcas. This, of course, will suspend the need for protocetaceans to evolve in the first place, because paradoxically, their descendants have already done it. Big boots to fill. Balenodontus orca. The baleen-toothed orca. In both the Cretaceous and Paleogene, there are no large filter or suction-feeding animals that we know of. There may have been something like a basking or whale shark, but nothing like today's baleen whales or the large ichthyosaurs of the Triassic. The descendants of the Dalcas go on to evolve to fill this empty niche. By the end of the Eocene, the first filter-feeding descendants of orcas emerged.
Oh, that would be terrifying.
Orca, or the baleen orca, is a filter/suction-feeding whale that has evolved convergently to our modern baleen whales, though their baleen plates are a bit more primitive and still in the works compared to our baleen whales.
It would
They
be
have very
scary.
short dorsal fins like modern whales, long powerful tails for efficient travel, as well as longer flippers like that of a humpback whale, which they use to defend themselves against predators. They weigh an astounding 100,000 pounds and reach a maximum length of 72 feet. And no, I didn't make it bigger than a blue whale, simply because every paleontologist and their dog wants to find the next biggest animal on Earth, and it's just not gonna happen.
Respect the blue, baby.
The baleen orca, of course, feeds on plankton, krill, and small fish. They have a large ventral pouch, which they use to suck up as much water and prey as possible, and expel the water while retaining the prey items. Unlike modern whales, the baleen orca has retained its sonar melon, allowing them to have unparalleled echolocation abilities. They also have retained their incredible intelligence and still live in large pods.
Again, the scariness of like having something like that that's also super smart, but maybe with the temperament of an orca, horrifying. Horrifying. I would never go to the ocean again.
They live in pods of anywhere between 3 and 8 individuals. They have impressive emotional intelligence and are in tune with the feelings and needs of their pod members. They use their great intelligence and their large bodies to coordinate and push large pockets of krill into each other, making feeding much easier for the whole pod. With cetaceans arriving onto the scene in the Cenozoic much earlier than in our normal timeline, the ecosystem of the ocean is likely to change and evolve in a vastly different way.
That would be
cetaceans
interesting.
Will occupy even more niches than they did before, or maybe they'll actually end up being less abundant. No matter how it goes though, I know everyone is going to have a whale of a time.
Haha. And that's from The Office. The Parks and Rec. I know that one. That show I know.
Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Assessing Survival. If you liked the episode, be sure to click the like button and leave a comment about what you'd like to see next. Also, don't forget to subscribe and keep an eye on the community tab on the channel, or join the Discord and come chat with me and some other folks. Links for the Discord as well as the Patreon are in the description. I'll send you guys out with some 3D renderings of the bears from the Speculative Evolution section of the last video by Josiba, a very talented member of our Discord. See you next time.
Those are scary looking. No thanks. I don't want a scary Jurassic bear. I don't want to see a scary Jurassic bear at all, actually. I think suddenly I've got a very new nightmare. Anyway, I'm going to hit that like button. Thanks, Boo. That was interesting. This is an interesting channel. Madly Mesozoic. Okay. Like I said, this was suggested to me on one of the more recent videos I've done. I've done so many paleontology type and like videos recently. I know I have to break free a little bit of this rabbit hole, but I'm also really enjoying myself, so I don't want to break free. But I will see you all in the next one.